and make sure that our voices are raised. First of all, global warming is a climate crisis. We have got to stop. We heard the moral reasons. There's some discussions about the scientific reasons, but we have got to stop global warming. It is the biggest challenge of our time. It threatens not only us as a species, but it threatens all the other species that we share the planet with. And there's nothing more important that you could be doing than trying to stop the impact of global warming. It is the challenge of our time. So building a dirty coal-fired power plant in this day and age is going 180 degrees in the wrong direction. It's compromising not only our future, because the projections of what we were going to see in global warming are now moving closer in time to us than we even thought before. Talking about the loss of the opening of the Northwest Passage in the Arctic. This last week or the week before, we saw a huge chunk of ice break off in the Antarctic, and the destabilization of our climate is leading to the breakup of vast glaciers that are going to impact sea level rise and devastate places like the Outer Banks and other places. So we've got to get serious about solving that problem. The good news is we made the problem, we can solve the problem. What we've got to do is invest in energy efficiency and clean energy sources, not in dirty coal-fired power plants. So what's going on with Cliffside? Well, Cliffside is one of about 120 plants that are being closed around the country. The good news is that just a year or so ago, there was over 150 coal-fired power plants that were closed. And a number of you and us and others that have been working on this, we've been stopping these plants. We do work in Florida. It was 24 months ago, there were 5 coal-fired power plants on the books in Florida. All of those now have been stopped. And that is a great victory. Literally millions and millions of tons of CO2 have been stopped because of the fights in Florida. There are fights going on in South Carolina and Georgia. Good work happening across the country. But this is a very important fight here because there's no reason why Duke needs to build this plant. Duke has the capacity, the ability to invest in cleaner technologies and not build it. So what's been going on? Well, if you remember, Jim Rogers originally said that we had to have 2 coal-fired power plants. He came to the North Carolina Utility Commission and said he needs to build 2 800-megawatt plants. Our organization and a number of other organizations actually went up against Duke and were able to stop one of those plants. We had Jim Rogers on the witness stand under oath for over 5 hours, bringing him to cross-examining him, and there's all kinds of misinformation he was putting out. He had the nerve to tell the utility commissioners that it would just be a short time before they could put a CO2 scrubber on this coal-fired power plant. That's absolutely false because they've chosen a technology, pulverized coal, that you can't capture carbon dioxide from. It's the wrong technology at the wrong time. And so, but I look at Jim Rogers as a wolf in sheep's clothing. Okay? He knows how to say all the right things. If you've ever heard him speak, he knows how to say all the right things to the environmental community. Because when he was at Synergy, the former utility, he made all kinds of friends in the environmental community because, to his credit, he was one of the first utility executives to stand up and start talking about global warming. But since he's come to Duke, he's become much more slick and sophisticated. And I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that have been saying. Because, you know, he said before the commission, we could put a CO2, a carbon dioxide scrubber, just as easy as an SO2 scrubber on the plant. Simply not true. They basically have now gone forward with the plant even though they have an illegal air permit. And why is the air permit illegal? Well, first of all, what they did was, under the Clean Smokestacks Act, they promised that they were going to basically close down some of these plants. And yet they're taking credit for those plants against this plant and basically not having to do the proper modeling to protect the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. They also went all the way to the Supreme Court fighting the environmental community over the fact that the Cliffside plant had made illegal modifications years ago that would have required them to put these pollution controls for SOx and NOx, sulfur dioxide, and nitrogen oxide on their plant. And they lost that at the Supreme Court. But they're still taking credit for those reductions, even though they were supposed to do those reductions even before they proposed the Cliffside plant. And they're using those 2 reasons for not doing the modeling necessary to protect the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. The Park Service says this plant will likely all the allowances for the existing coal-fired power plants. He wants those to be given to Duke for free. He wants those allowances, instead of polluters pay and being required to have to go out there and pay the cost which will literally bring in billions of dollars. You know, we've got the stickers here about clean, green jobs. If you want to transform this economy, if you want to make a difference in sea renewables, what you've got to do is you've got to make sure that the polluter pays for the pollution that they put into the atmosphere. They can't do it for free. They've been given pollution for free. They've taken advantage of our atmosphere for years for free. Now they need to pay. And when you capture that money, you can put it towards renewables, you can put it towards energy efficiency, and we can transform our economy. But who is the leading voice against making the utilities pay for those allowances? Jim Rogers. Jim Rogers, a wolf in sheep's clothing. He says that he's slick on the tongue. He says he's all for the environment. But the reality is that he is leading the charge for the industry, bankrolling the coal industry, building a dirty coal-fired power plant, moving forward illegally, even though the permit's illegally, and now he's up in Washington, D.C. trying to prevent the money that is necessary to transform our economy by making polluters pay. He wants that given free for his shareholders, as opposed to making sure that polluters pay, transform, and make the cost of coal too expensive to go forward. The other thing that's so devious about what's going on is he's saying, oh, this plant's carbon neutral. There is no way that you can build an 800 megawatt pulverized coal plant that has no way to control CO2 that will operate for the next 50 years and with a straight face call it a carbon neutral plant. That is absolutely misleading. What it is the way they're doing it is they have to retire some of those old plants that they have there because they're so inefficient. They're not running that much, but they're going to retire them. Then they've made a promise that they'll retire additional power plants. But let me inform you, they have not locked down those allowances and taken them out of the market. Because what he will do is when he retires those plants in a few years, he's basically going to capture those carbon credits and use them again. You know, if they were taken out of the market, that would be a great thing. Anytime we retire a coal-fired power plant, it's a good thing. But the reality is if you're going to double count, like he double counted for the pollution controls at Cliffside to prevent to have to do what's necessary to clean up the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, if he's going to double count for carbon dioxide, that is illegal, it's wrong, it's immoral, and it needs to be stopped. A wolf in sheep's clothing. That's what we have. And that's what we need to demand. We need to demand that Duke Energy be a true leader in the clean energy revolution. Not to raise your voices. How many of you are actually Duke customers?
Are we?
How many people are actually writing letters to the company, telling your friends and neighbors, that's what we need to do? This is an outrage. The company is given a monopoly market. We don't have a choice. You can't go to another power company. And yet, with that monopoly power, they are preventing you from having a clean energy future, and there's my son's future, all of our futures are jeopardy because the more CO2 we put in the atmosphere, the more we destabilize the climate, the more we exacerbate the global warming crisis, the climate crisis we have. So I commend you for coming out today and basically standing strong with your voice in the rain. We need to join together, join with our organizations and all the other organizations that are here. Let's stick together. It's not over until it's over. You know, I know they're trying to build that plant. A number of us have now filed lawsuits against them. There's a number of different lawsuits against the air permit because it's illegal, because, you know, they haven't been following the law. And we need to keep our heads strong. We need to hold out because this plant needs to be stopped. We've stopped plants around the country. We can stop this one. Thank you very much.